digital resources of the State Library and State Historical Society newspapers. And we have two presenters today. If this is not the session that you thought you were in, you can use the link for the first session to switch back over, and you will be taken out of this room and put back in the other room when you click on the other link. So first up, we have Holly Hutchinson from the State Library of Kansas. Holly, thank you for being here. Do you want to share your screen and have a brief introduction? And then after Holly, we will have Dylan. I have to look for the pronunciation of your last name. So give me just a second to switch my page over. Okay. Dylan Sweyko-Kuhlman, who is a digital archivist at KSHS, and he has a history. He was a history undergrad at Baker and has an MLS from Emporia. He's worked in archives, libraries, and museums since 2009.
So I'm Holly, and this is pretty much how I live my life, is just, trying to get from one weird thing to another. I work at the State Library. I'm going to tell you about some of our resources and how they can help you and your users be more resilient, because that was the theme today. My agenda, I'm going to kind of hurry through stuff because I have a tendency to talk more than I need to. And, but the points that I'm going to go over, I have an intro about who I am and why I'm talking to you. I'm going to touch on our Talking Books division. I'll go over e-cards and our website. Our popular things are ebooks and audiobooks, our online resources. And then I want to tell you about our reference division, and that's where the legislative hotline is. And then I will have a little bit of time for questions before Dylan blows your mind with stuff from the Historical Society. So I'm Holly Hutchinson. I'm a former teacher. I was a children's librarian for about 10 years. Currently, I work at the statewide services division of the State Library of Kansas. I'm an avid knitter, baker, and listener of audiobooks. If you ever need recommendations for audiobooks, look me up, find me. I'll be happy to talk your ear off about them. Or if you have really good recommendations, I'm always looking for a new book to listen to. And I've been where you are, so I'm going to make this as painless as possible. You're listening to this stuff and it's hard to do it online. But to get started with, if you don't know about our Talking Books division, it's a national program, but each state has their own office for Talking Books. They are housed through the State Library, so they're part of us, and their office is in Emporia. They provide services to any residents that have a reading disability. So maybe you are vision impaired, or maybe you've had a physical disability that keeps you from holding on to a physical or print material. They help with that. And they have audiobooks, magazines, and other equipment like currency readers, which is really cool. They have a lot of stuff online now. So if you have an iPad or a tablet, you can use their digital download system, but they have Braille and all kinds of stuff. It's really, really cool. If you don't know about it, I would encourage you to check out their website, check out their Facebook. They do programs. They have like a phone book discussion and everything. They're really awesome. So it's a great resource to look into if you don't know about it. And if you do know about it, check them out and see if there are any updates. Where to start? The State Library has a lot of information and it can be overwhelming. So I'm going to bust it down to the easiest thing that you need to know first to help yourself and your patrons. The librarians tab on our website, which we're in the middle of doing a website redesign. So this will probably change, hopefully, to make it easier. But just hover over the librarians tab. You don't have to click it. And then you can find the Kansas Library e-card. That orange part is what you would click on. And when you go to that, you're going to find out that this is where you will issue library cards from. And all libraries in Kansas, school libraries, public libraries, have the ability to issue cards. You can create cards, you can renew cards for patrons. They're only good for 3 years at a time. And you can search for patrons. So if somebody comes in to get a library card, you should check and see if they already have one, because sometimes they don't remember. And then you can either renew them or make them a new one. If you don't know how to do this, or you have lost your admin credentials, you can just send us an email. We actually have on that page on the left side, there's a spot where if you've forgotten your admin, you can fill out a form and we'll just email it right back to you. We have a tutorial that tells you step by step how to do, how to issue a card and how to kind of promote it. We have printable cards. We like a long time ago, we used to have these orange ones that we would mail out. We don't do that anymore. But you can print your own e-cards. And we also have a brochure that you can print out that has a lot of this information for users. And there's a spot for you to write their card number information on the front of it. And what do you need to know to get started? The most important thing to know is that you don't have to know everything. We have instructions on our website under the Kansas tab. You can go to digital book e-lending and you can see there's an instructions and devices tab. And it has, Andy is our digital librarian and he's amazing. He always has everything up to date. He's got step-by-step instructions. We have tutorials on how to get these devices to download the apps on them and how to use them on the apps. So that's all there. Our tutorials tab, we go through Niche Academy, which is super cool. And it's actually a green tab, and these are some old screenshots. It's blue on here, but it's green. And when you click on it, you'll see all of these tutorials come up, and we've got them into different categories. So we have them for our online resources. We have them for our ebook and audiobook resources. There's even like a librarians academy that is on that librarians tab. And it has tutorials on how to deal with customer service or a disgruntled customer, things like that. And if there's ever something that you feel like we need a tutorial for, you can email us and we are happy to create one of those for you. So once you get that card created, you're going to send people to our website and they can log in on the homepage. And we've got these quick links on the left side. We've got the digital books and the online resources. We've got talking books. And then there's the staff directory. So if you don't know what you're looking for, you can find an employee and email us and we'll help you out. On the right side is the tutorials tab. You can see this one is the green one. This is the newer one. And you can click on these anytime. They're always available. Most of our resources are available without logging into the website. Our ebooks are the only ones that you have to be logged in all the time to use. And then I'll touch on this again later, but most of them you can just click on and they work. But our ebooks that we have right now are collections. We have Cloud Library. We've had that one for a long time. And it has our ebooks, and we have Freeding, which you can get 5 checkouts a week. I think that's still the rule. But it's unlimited copies. So if somebody is trying to do a book discussion group, this is a great place to go and find a title. They don't have a lot of like the real popular ones, but if you're just looking for something that you can have a lot of readers read at one time, Freeding is a great way to go. Inky Library is an interesting one. They have a lot of self-published stuff on there. So sometimes with self-published, it's like a real turkey of a book, but sometimes you find really awesome stuff on there. So I always think it's a great resource to check if you're looking for something. And then I'm real excited about Comics Plus. This is new. Comics Plus used to be, I think, with RB Digital or something. And so they've had to switch, and now they're under Library Pass. So you have to find the app under Library Pass. But again, this is unlimited copies, so you can have as many users reading the same material as you want. And they've got graphic novels, they've got manga, they've got lots of really cool stuff on there. You can use it in classrooms. The only thing about this is that it requires a separate login, and I'll show you where that is in a couple of slides. For audiobooks, the only app we have right now for audiobooks is Cloud Library, and it makes it a lot easier than when we had RB Digital, because now all of our ebooks and audiobooks, the most popular ones, are in one app. If you didn't know, RB Digital was discontinued. It got bought out by a different company. It was a character building experience transitioning from one to the other. And so they're actually owned by Overdrive now. So RB Digital is no longer active. If you see anything on our website that still has RB Digital, once in a while we see something pop up that still has it on there, let us know and we'll take it off, because it's not a thing anymore. For youth materials, we have a couple of platforms. We have Britannica eStacks. It's pre-K through 9. It's mostly nonfiction. I think it's all nonfiction, actually. But it's a great resource. You don't have to be logged in to use it. Scholastic Bookflix. This one is pre-K through 3, 3rd grade. And I love it so much because it pairs storybook video with a nonfiction book. So I love it because I have a lot of kids that don't like nonfiction. Lots of times I get little boys that all they want is nonfiction, but then there's most of the kids who just want, chapter books and storybooks and things like that. And so I love that it pairs them together. And then there are little activities that go with them. And then the thing that most people have been real excited about is Tumble Books is back. We had Tumble Books several years ago, and then we didn't have the budget to continue it. During the pandemic, they were so generous, and I don't know if they're just so nice because it's a Canadian company or what, but they let everybody have free access to all of their materials through the original shutdown. And we saw such a big influx of users that we found some money and we've contracted with them. So I think we have it for at least 3 years. And then I'm sure they'll have to redo the contracts, but it's back right now. It's great for, you can use it in story times. You can use it in classrooms. It's pre-K through 6th grade material. So there are some chapter books. There's a lot of early chapter books on there. And so it's really fun. We just did a webinar on it. If you didn't get to see it, you can go to our website. It's recorded and you can look at it there. Our online databases, again, we've got a quick link for that on our homepage. And then I just realized you guys are probably seeing my notes view, but it's fine. But our online resources, when you click on it, it goes to a big page, and we've got them kind of genre listed. We have general research, history, genealogy, health, all that stuff. We've even got a library and educator resources tab. And there are things in there like Novelist Plus. I love it. If you do any reader's advisory, it's a great tool because they always have read-alikes listed there. If you know any teachers, we have Mailbox, the school and district edition, so they can have access to all of the stuff, because Mailbox, the magazine, was it's gone digital from a few years back, but all of the same resources are available there, and it's completely free for you guys to use. And there's a bunch of other stuff that you guys can check out in there. Along with that, we have kids specific databases. We have some for kids that are like elementary, and then we have high school. So there's some more stuff in there, like our college prep tools are in there, and some of the more like heavy research materials are going to be linked in there, but we've kind of filtered out the other stuff that wouldn't be useful as a rule in school research. So all of these resources I've talked about on online databases are available to just click in. As long as you have a Kansas ISP, like an internet service provider, you should, in quotes, be able to access all of these. That doesn't always happen because the geolocation stuff gets wacky sometimes. But if you log in on the home page, that front page I showed you a few slides back, you can click on and you can log in with your library card. And when you log in, this is what it will look like. And it tells you, you know, what your name is and when your card expires. And I think there's some other tools in there that you can use. And this is where people will have to come. You have to sign in to our site to get to the Comics Plus sign-in links. And what's kind of cool about Comics Plus is that they have two different collections. They have a kids section. So if you're concerned or parents are concerned about the content their kids might be able to view or read, you can sign them up for the kids one. If you outgrow the kids one at some point, or if you are an adult and you want access to all of the material, you can sign up for the regular Comics Plus, and that has all the kids stuff included in it. And so if you've signed up for the kids one, you could just re-sign up for the other one at another point. And so my other note is that if you are an admin on here, like if you have administration rights for creating cards and you're trying to log in and it's not working, one of the things to check is to make sure up here in the corner in the top right that you are not signed in as a user. You have to be signed in, you have to sign out as a user to sign in as an admin. And that's something that we run into sometimes. If you guys want local setups or stats, I encourage you to email my friend Andy Schaefer. He's the digital librarian here. You can get direct links for most of these resources to have on your own webpage, or if you're a school librarian, you have a school page, you can do that. You can get remote access through your library, and there's a bunch of like computer-y stuff that I don't really understand, goes totally over my head. But if you need any of this stuff, we can help you set that up on your local site. Some of my favorites, resources that I think would go along with this being resilient theme. We have Learning Library Express, and this has college prep. It has high school stuff. They have lots of different like practice tests. And there's a job and career readiness piece on this that you can go to. It helps with your resumes and how to fill out applications, things like that. So this is a great resource, especially if you don't have a workforce center office in your location. This is a really helpful resource. Universal Class is super awesome. It's so fun. You can take stuff from like computer coding to cake decorating. Some of these, like some places will give you credit, like continuing education credits for these. You don't have to do that. It's really fun. Some of it, I would encourage you to explore this one. There's all kinds of stuff on here. If you need a refresher on Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, any of that stuff, they've got all of it in here, along with a bunch of other stuff. Like you can see on this, it's got accounting and crafts and hobbies, all kinds of stuff. Another fun one is Mango Language. It's an app. You guys can put it on your phone or your tablets. One of the things that I appreciate is it's got Spanish for librarians. I needed that, 100 years ago when I was working in college at a library. But a lot of people spend money on like Babbel and Rosetta Stone, but I would encourage you to try this first and see if it works for you, because we have this as a resource. Speaking of languages, we have several of our resources have Spanish counterparts. So these are the ones that we have available. The Britannica stuff is really helpful, and the health stuff is really helpful, I think. So those are resources if you need those in your communities. And we have webinars on training. We have webinars on our databases spread throughout the year. This last year, of course, we didn't have everything going on. But we've got webinars coming up again. We've got some on that Learning Express library are coming up in September and October. We've got anything that we do a webinar on, we record, or we try to remember to record. We post it on our website and you can find those. And every month we have continuing ed opportunities sent out on a listserv. And if you need help finding those, you can email me or you can find the listserv and join it on our website. And if you didn't know, we also have a reference section, and our reference department, they put together our Kansas government information database. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit older that has been a state document, they might have that, or they can help you with it. We have an Ask a Librarian chat. You can get it on our homepage, or you can do our web address /ask. And then we also have a legislative hotline. So if your patrons have questions about something regarding things that are happening with bills and things like that, they can call in, and our reference department is happy to assist you guys in finding answers for that. So I don't know that much I don't know as much as I should about our reference department, because they are the real smarty pants and they do the research, and they're pretty amazing. And if you need an answer, they'll find it for you. So now I have time for questions, and I'm also doing a plug that we'll have a session, the more in-depth session about our resources at KLA, and we'll have a booth there. So does anybody have questions?
We can take a couple of questions really quickly, and before we switch over to Dylan. Sarah was asking how to get on the listserv.
There is a web address for it, a web page that has those. And when Dylan is presenting, I will find it and I will put it in the chat for you guys.
Thank you, Holly. Does anyone else have questions? I agree. The Kansas Library Card is a great resource. I think my question was, who is the contact for Talking Books at the state?
Michael Lang is the director. He's a super awesome dude. On our website, I think they just have a generic contact. They just have a number, but Maggie Witt is the one who does most of the outreach for Talking Books. But I will put our link to actually, just if you go to our website and you click on the Talking Books quick link, that'll get you all of their information, and there's a direct link to their email.
All right.
So because I think they have multiple people that answer it.
Hello, everyone. I am Dylan Sweyko-Kuhlman. I'm the digital archivist here at the Kansas Historical Society. And you are getting either the B or the C team maybe today. Usually the person who gives this presentation is Michael, my supervisor, Michael Church. So I'll do my best to fill in today. So there'll be some stuff that I am not as well informed on, but I'll do my best. So I'll be going over the Kansas Digital Newspaper Program for the Historical Society and kind of the main parts that make up that collection and the programs that we're involved in, and the kind of the history, a little bit of how it started and why we have so many newspapers, basically. So an anecdote that Michael always likes to start his presentation with, in 1906, Henry King, a early Kansas newsman and occasional satirist, noted that Kansas must be the only place on the face of the earth where a newspaper was started before there was any news to print. King was referring, of course, to the first issue of the Kansas Weekly Herald. That is this guy right here, printed in 1854. And his comment noted the great enthusiasm for local journalism in Kansas. and foretold a series of great newspaper achievements in the state. So, because basically how the Kansas Historical Society got started is its main goal was wrapped around newspapers. It was started by the Kansas Editors and Publishers Association. They're the ones who funded and started KSHS. So from the outset, our goal was kind of involved with Kansas newspapers. In fact, I'm the digital archivist now, but I actually got started in one of the programs I'm going to go over later called the NDNP, the National Digital Newspaper Program. And I was there for 1 year in 2014, I think. And they actually, the quote that I have up now on the slideshow, they made a point of like showing me when I started my position here of like how important newspapers are to the Historical Society. So in 1875, that's when founded the Historical Society with an explicit mandate to preserve Kansas newspapers. By 1916 or 17, there's a little bit of debate on that. They claim the largest newspaper archives in the world. That's a little bit debated at the time. But by 1937, Kansas led all states with a total of 4,368 papers published. There were a lot of titles. There are a lot of Kansas newspaper titles. Now our intake is down to, I think, about 300 titles that we get on different, daily, weekly, monthly basis. But we get about 300 different titles coming in, usually a month. In 1982, the U.S. Newspapers Program, one of the 8 national newspaper repositories, cataloged more than 10,000 titles. And then the last three are the last 3 points on the slide are kind of the different facets of our Kansas Digital Newspapers Program, which I'll go over right now. These are the 3 big ones. The one highlighted, the Newspaperscom, is kind of be what the main part of this presentation will be over, because that's where the majority of the titles and pages are. NDNP is a little bit smaller. I'll kind of go over it briefly just because I have a little bit of more background knowledge of that. And the KPA is more of a more recent titles. Let's see. So there's an extraordinary amount of newspaper content that we have, including more than 50,000 microfilm rolls of newspaper. And each microfilm roll can have between, some have like 500 different pages on them, and some have more than 1,000 pages. So that's a lot of content. We did a pretty good job, or our predecessors did a pretty good job of publishing and archiving and preserving the newspapers, but it's really the main issue we have now is doing a better job of access to it. And that's kind of a tricky thing when you measure the amount of pages you have in the millions. It's kind of a hard thing to manage. So the 3 kind of sections that we have up here for our content that is on newspapers.com. The first bullet is kind of a very small selection. It's third-party stuff that comes from outside of our sources here in Topeka. So it's stuff that's been digitized elsewhere. It represents like a very, very small percentage. Our collection, the stuff in the highlighted, that is where the bulk of our stuff is on newspapers.com. That consists of the public domain materials and the publisher permissions. The public domain is the big one. As I go on in the presentation, I'll explain a little bit more, but it's basically newspaper titles pre-1922. What we loosely call the public domain. That stuff is what we mainly have digitized and is available on newspapers.com. The third section, the publisher's agreement, we included this even though we're kind of not really a part of it. It's a third-party revenue sharing between Kansas publishers and newspapers.com. It doesn't really involve us too much. We're not really we don't participate in the deal, but it's a special thing that's on newspapers.com called, I think they just call it Publishers Extra, where it's a deal between the publishers and newspapers.com for them to digitize their content and put it straight on newspapers.com, but it's something that you pay extra for on newspapers.com. So that is technically Kansas content that's on there, but it's something that you have to pay extra for. This bar graph we put it in there to just illustrate the size and scope of our newspaper collection. We measure, those numbers are in the millions. So as I mentioned before, the pre-1923 stuff, the stuff that we consider public domain, we usually ballpark it around 12 million, and the post 1922 stuff is in the 25 million pages. So a lot of content. This is a bit of a dated graph that shows our production rates. That kind of, there's a lot of factors that go into that that kind of shows the up and down nature. There's a lot of factors that kind of hinder us lots of times. I'm sure I don't need to go over. One of the things that I noted when I was going over this presentation with Michael is that it ends in 2017, and it doesn't really include our, we had a pretty big scanning year in 2018, 2019, and then it kind of drops off when COVID hits, which is probably no surprise to anyone. And that has kind of just derailed a lot of stuff. But kind of the main thing showing that like there's a lot of technical problems, duplicating microfilm, staff resources is kind of the major one. That's the main hindrance now, is we don't have a dedicated image tech to image stuff for us anymore. Usually if we have, I'm the one that does some of our microfilm imaging now, and that's like on a case by case basis when we have emergency stuff come up. So there's a lot of stuff that's hindering us at the current moment to get more pages basically up on newspapers.com. Too far. There we go. This is the most telling graph that we have. It's kind of the tale of two stories. On the left, that is our pre-1923 newspapers. Most of it's digitized. It's basically all done. There's a slight kind of sliver that we don't have done. That's an interesting story of film, of some of our earliest titles, like 1850s, 1860 titles of newspapers in Kansas that we don't have digitized because we have poor film. Like the quality of the microfilm themselves doesn't lend itself to being digitized. It's kind of hard on the film, and we only have one copy of those. So we're kind of hesitant to digitize those. So that's kind of the only sliver we're missing there. And then on the other side, the post-1922 newspapers, we do not have, in the grand scheme of things, we do not have a lot of them done. That stuff is, I'll break it down later, but basically there's a lot of hoops we have to jump through to get the rights, to make sure that we have the rights to kind of do our due diligence to make sure that we can scan these and then post them online somewhere. But that's what we're working on now, is the post 1922 stuff. This is, if anyone's familiar with newspapers.com, which I'll get into a little bit later, this is kind of just, we like to show kind of the drop off of post 1922 stuff. Like this is a graph that's usually on the left of whatever you're looking at on newspaper.com. If you're looking at like a title or something like that, it shows how many issues each, roughly what each year has. And a lot of the titles look like that. So I think I want to go back to this one. Most of the stuff for the post 1920 stuff between 1924 and 1963, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there where most likely the titles are in the public domain, and we could scan them and digitize them and put them up, mostly because in that kind of window, the copyright for those titles has to either be usually it has to be renewed, and just in a lot of Kansas titles, what we found is just over the years the copyright was not renewed, but we still, just to cover our bases, we like to make sure we either approach the publishers or whoever had the last, if it's a publisher's family or it's descendants of the family members, we like to make sure that we have the rights to publish it. Everything after 1964 to roughly the present is presumed to be copyrighted. So we have to go to the publishers to get right to, to scan it. So the important stuff, how to access our newspapers that we have scanned. So this is on our website, kshs.org. If you if you look in kind of the gray bar, if you go under the research tab, genealogy indexes, and there's a big newspapers tab, we kind of have it broken down by subject or what you're looking for. We have three big ones: Chronicling America, the kind of the smaller one I mentioned earlier. That is basically a small sampling of digital newspapers that are free to look through. They're broken down by title. Basically, it was a grant funded project that we had for I think about 5 or 6 years. I was there for one of them, and it was basically a grant to digitize papers to a certain standard. And usually what we did is we'd pick and choose titles. So like we'd have a title from Emporia, and we'd scan 4 years of it. And then we'd jump to Dodge City and we'd scan 2 years of that, and we'd hit different cities, different towns, and digitize titles. The year that I was there working for that grant, we did the Topeka Capital Journal, and we did a larger chunk. We did, I think, about 20 or 30 years of it, I think. But that's kind of a smaller sample size. Newspapers.com is where the big stuff is. So if you're familiar with this, we have two links to it. I'll kind of go over the middle one first, because that is where you get the majority of the stuff, that the 12 million pages we have up roughly. It's the deal that we have with newspapers.com is that if we scan it or they scan it and we put it up and they host it, it is free to Kansas residents. And the way the barrier to entry to that is a driver's license or state ID, that if you click into that link, it has you enter that information, and then you have access to our digital newspapers on newspapers.com, which is really good with the way we wanted to do that. So Kansas residents, it was like if a patron was going to come to our library or our reference room, we want them to have access on the internet, what they would have access to here. So it's a really good resource, but it still has the problem where there's a lot of people in Kansas that don't have IDs to use. The big one we wanted was kids in schools and stuff like that. So what we worked into our contract is we have a 3-year embargo for our titles with newspapers.com. So when they upload a title, the Kansas resident has access to it through the driver's license matching, and then newspapers.com has it for 3 years. And then after that rolling time period for that specific title, it becomes open access. And that's the third link. That open access link is everything past that 3-year embargo from us is available on their website. I think there's still some sign-in stuff that you have to do with newspapers.com to use, I think, some of their tools, like their clipping tools, stuff like that, kind of their periphery stuff, but you can just have open access. The important thing with that is, since we did the bulk of our scanning in 2018 and 2019, next year should be the next big release for titles to the open access. So instead, I know I had teacher friends that used to use when they're using the newspaper resources in classes, they would go around and have to put their driver's license in on each terminal, each computer, to get access to what they wanted. And hopefully that won't be as much of an issue since the majority of titles will be on the open access side of it now, and I think in 2022 sometime. So that's good. But those are kind of the main access points that we have for our digital newspapers. This is a example screen for what newspapers.com looks like. I think it's a little bit different now because this is a dated screenshot, but it kind of just shows the titles, how many pages under each title, the span that they have. If you notice, all 6 of those, or 5 of the 6, ended 1922 because that was our cutoff date. Let's see. So how are we tackling our post-1922 stuff? I've touched on this a little bit, but we work directly with the publishers now to get permission to digitize their collections or their titles, mainly because we don't want to violate copyright. And this is kind of the primary barrier why, other than COVID and staffing issues, this is kind of the main barrier to getting more titles up on newspapers.com. We have to go receive permission, and then we have to work with newspapers.com to get them up. The 2 recent ones that we're working with that we have agreements for with the publishers, I know I've personally worked on the Iola Register, and I think we are mostly done with the Parsons Sun, I believe. It was kind of interesting. This is a little bit, again, you're getting the B team a little bit above me because I don't do a lot of the contract work. So this is something I learned preparing this presentation. We don't actually work directly with the publishers to get permission because it is, I think the way we view it is the editors and the publishers view it as valuable content. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of pages of newspapers that is worth something. I mean, newspapers.com spends a lot of money to get content like that. So it's sometimes we don't want to be disingenuous when we come up to a publisher and say, hey, give us all your newspapers so we can digitize it and put it up on a website for free after 3 years. So we work with a lot of members in the community that the title is in and kind of make it a team effort to ask for permission to hopefully ease the ask. But usually I don't think it's too much trouble. So that's kind of the rest of that pie graph is the titles that are in that stuff that we have not scanned yet, but we're working with publishers to get agreements on. We have a base contract with newspapers.com, and we go through title by title when we get agreements and add appendixes to the end of the contract. So right now we're on Appendix I, and it has 10 or 20 newspaper titles that we've gotten agreements from recently from the publishers that we can scan, 1922 to 1940 or whatever, something like that. So hopefully that pie graph will start to be a little bit more blue in the future, and we'll get it on newspapers.com. This is kind of the breakdown of the copyright stuff that we work with. The 2 dates, helpfully spray painted with blue MS Paint, is the 2 main categories we work within, which we just usually work within. The first one's in the public domain, obviously, and then the 23 to 63 is the majority of the stuff that we have that we just need copyright permission to scan. This is an example contract that we have with the publishers that just kind of lays out, it kind of mentions the 3-year embargo there and kind of gives them the heads up of, what we plan to do with it, scanning, sharing on newspapers.com. They still have access to it. We still have access to it. Kansas residents would get access to it and kind of see how good it would be for Kansas residents and just to have access to that resource. But I think that is it. There's our contact info. Hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions. If not, I can also pass along any questions to Michael as well.
Thank you so much, Dylan. We did have a couple of questions in the
Yeah.
chat. Okay, so
Let me pull up the chat.
is there a way to find out by newspaper what years have been digitized?
On newspapers.com, I'm assuming. Let me pull up the chat real quick. There we go. Okay, yeah. Is there a way to find out by paper what years have been digitized? Yeah, the best way would be if you're talking for strictly on newspapers.com, yes. If you go by, I think they have, if you know the title, you can just search by the title. It's a little bit hard to get to, but newspapers.com should have a category where you can find a list of titles and they are listed alphabetical. And then each one usually has like a date span for it. If it doesn't, you can click into it and then it will have that little graph of like, there's so many issues in 1918 and so many issues in 1919 and so forth and so on. If you're looking for, if you're doing website research on our site, there is as well. In that newspaper tab that I showed earlier, you can type in a town or a title and then a date range, and it should bring up a search result that has a list of titles broken down by year, and it will even have, this isn't as helpful if you're looking for online stuff, but it will have, we have this only on microfilm and it has the real number. If it is online, it'll say online newspapers.com, or for the rare occasion when it's on Chronically in America, it'll be on Chronically in America. So either way, you should be good. It does help if you know the title, but you can, newspapers.com has pretty good search functions, and they do a pretty good job of breaking it down by title, so it shouldn't be too bad. There is some tricky stuff where, just to get into a little bit of newspaper history, newspaper titles changed names a lot, but it's still the same newspaper. So there's some times where if you're looking for a certain title, for, I don't know, there's a Lawrence newspaper, and you may not be able to find it because you have the wrong title, even though it's the same paper, which can be annoying sometimes.
Thank you for that. And there was one other question from the same person, asking, do you have some strategies or ways to encourage newspapers that haven't been digitized yet to get digitized?
Kind of, yeah. That is the brief part I mentioned about working within the community. Usually it's Michael who works out with kind of the outreach on the newspaper side. We usually, sometimes we have relationships with the publishers themselves. Like I know the Iowa Register, the one I've worked on recently, we actually know the publishers. It's a old family, publisher family that has owned the paper for years. And they actually, I can't remember if we reached out to them or they reached out to us, but they wanted their newspapers digitized because they saw the benefit in it. They saw the benefit to Kansas in it and wanted them digitized. Like everything else now, that has kind of slowed down to a crawl. If you have any tips or leads, we're always looking to add new titles to our next appendix of newspapers to be digitized, because the majority of the newspaper research that gets done through the Historical Society is papers on newspapers.com. So the more stuff we get up there, it's better for our patrons. We don't need people to come in and use our newspapers. It's just so much easier. It's way better, way more searchable. It's just a bigger benefit to everyone. So we'll take all the help we can get. We're helping us get more titles up there because it's better for everyone.
So would you say it's fair to say that they should contact the Kansas State Historical Society and let you all reach out to the newspaper?
Yeah, or if you have contact with them as well, with the publisher, if you have a relationship with them, that always helps. It's always that the first step in the door can always be a little bit weird when you say, hey, give us your content so we can scan it. Let us have that content, please, because it is a valuable resource. Like they can make money selling it elsewhere. If a newspaper, like that example with Iowa Register, if the same family has owned it for 80 years, they have a back archives of their issues that is solely theirs to do what they want with it. So sometimes it does help to have a friendly person in the neighborhood help us.
Jennifer at Caney has a good tip. She says
Yeah.
a contract was sent to the state for the digitization process to begin. Jennifer, the state being the State Historical Society?
Contract was sent to the state.
Okay. And then we have
Good.
another question. Kay would like to know, how does a library check out microfilm?
Yes, that is a good question. I know we used to do, we had an ILL system for our microfilm, but I don't know if we send stuff out anymore because we don't have the staff to do it. That would be a question that I have to maybe send over to our reference side. I know we used to, our part-time pages handled that. And they had the special red carrier bags, and I knew the system, but I didn't work with it. But I don't know if we are still mailing out microfilm through ILL. I would recommend I can give you their email, or if you search reference on kshs.org, it'll pull up the reference page. But if you want to email our reference, I think it's kshs.reference@ks.gov, but I can throw that in the chat too. But they would be the ones that ask for any loaning out of material.
I am searching reference right now on your website to see what comes up.
Yeah, I can throw it in there real quick.
And there's a link, there's a bullet point that says microphones. So let's look. I'll just put that link in there right now instead of you all waiting for me to read through it. Good questions. Anyone else? And Caroline Robb says that the State Historical Society does not send out microfilm anymore.
That's
not for the time being.
Just looking at our mailroom, because I mail out a lot of stuff for other grant projects, and there's not a lot of stuff that goes through ILL anymore. So I assumed, which is unfortunate, but that's the times we're living in.